This video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thanks for letting me do this for so long. My favourite genre of nutjob would have to be the apocalypse predictors. Not content with the status quo of everyday life, they grasp for the future, so they can tell the world how and when everything will come to an end, and it's almost always hilarious. I thought I'd give some of this doomsaying a go today, but given that you guys only care about video games, we have to instead focus more on how and why all of this video gaming will blow up in a big fireball. The video game industry is rampant and is arguably in its strongest position for a long time, but that doesn't mean that some of the skeletons lurking in the closet won't come crawling out to ruin everyone's fun. And believe me, this industry has a lot of skeletons. When you're neck deep in your latest video game obsession, it can be very easy to forget how all of this came about. I get it, when I'm chowing down on a steak or a sausage sandwich, the last thing I want going through my head is how much Bessie the cow or Frederick the pig enjoyed life and didn't want to be my breakfast, but ignoring how something is made doesn't simply make the harsh truth go away. Video games are so often wonderful and have provided me with so many strong memories in the past, but your standard video game development cycle isn't quite as whimsical as the industry would lead you to believe. This isn't Willy Wonka strutting his stuff around his magical chocolate factory, this is crunch and all the damage it causes. You can see crunch in so many other fields, especially those that aim to create a product on a strict deadline like the movie and TV industries, but I feel like video game crunch has become a lot more public over the last couple of years as employees have started to share their horror stories. The increased pressure to create a top-of-the-line video gaming experience under narrower deadlines has led to work conditions being uncomfortable at best and inhuman at worst, with 100-hour work weeks being the norm and the vast majority of mainstream games being created under these circumstances. Crunch has become so mainstream that at this point it's just part of development culture, and while that may hint at the industry adapting to this insane level of employee pressure, the reality is that as soon as people stop complaining about crunch being a problem, games can keep having these ridiculous deadlines and higher-ups will do even more to stretch their staff and push them even further somehow. Crunch being successful just means that we haven't reached critical mass yet. It'll be a messy day when we find it. If this video feels eerily similar to something I've talked about recently, that'll be because one of the biggest threats to the video game industry is in fact the complete lack of digital preservation, which is basically what I spent my last video talking about. Video games are run by capitalism's obsession with making money and having this constant stream of growth that definitely isn't unsustainable or anything, but in pursuit of the next amazing piece of technology to power the new consoles, they tend to leave the old ideas behind, with a worrying consistency. As technology improves and all services, not just video games, become more cloud-based, we are losing our physical attachment to video games. We are living in an age where the vast majority of games on the market today are available digitally, and where it is far more convenient to press download than it is to buy the physical game disc in person or wait for it to ship to you from an online store. You don't need to store a whole wall's worth of video games when you can load everything up onto the hard drive in your console or your computer and save all that physical space. The problem is how digital preservation has virtually zero priority among publishers and distributors, and how you only own these digital games for as long as the rights holders want you to have them. We're seeing similar issues when it comes to streaming movies, with how companies like Netflix are taking films down, which obviously restricts your access to it, which is a major problem given that 2 decades ago we all had the physical copy of everything and you could load it up at any time. The lack of digital preservation gives newer games this incredibly fragile existence that could come to an end with no warning at any time, and there are an alarming number of cases every year where games go offline forever and simply cease to exist. We are seeing games as less of a product that you can own and more like a service that you can pay into for a certain amount of time, and given the huge amount of work that goes into your average video game, that feels really shitty. It's like one big Library of Alexandria, and that fire is getting very close. If you asked me what one thing gives me a sense of existential dread when it comes to the future of the video game industry, it wouldn't be the planet getting hit by an asteroid or another ice age, it would be artificial intelligence. For decades, talking about AI as it pertains to video games was a subject that focused on how enemy and friendly AI was programmed into a game and how realistic or painfully terrible it was. Sadly, the harsh realities of modern day mean that instead of fretting about how a game can implement a companion character who doesn't hurt my brain, we've got this bizarre movement to introduce content into video games that was created not by human hands, but by the fucking Terminator. Jay's a pretty cool guy, but I don't know if I want him drawing the background art in my video game. Feel like he wouldn't be very good at that. Artificial intelligence is a major problem in any creative industry. It's not quite the same as the 1960s and 70s when robots were introduced into industrial factories and took production line jobs away from real people, since a computer program can assemble a car faster and more efficiently and for the fraction of the cost that a human can. I think some people are seeing those benefits and convincing themselves that AI is the way forward for video games too. Which would likely be the case if the vast majority of components in your average video game weren't creative decisions. Artwork is probably the one that AI is gearing towards replacing, and we are now sadly living in an age where AI art is very prevalent and doing a spectacular job of undermining the work of actual artists. It's already taking jobs away from people, and it's only just got started. It's not just art though, everything from a game's story to the voice acting, and you better believe that there's people out there combining all of this with procedural generation to create a fully AI generated video game, and that's a horrifying future. Higher-ups will see more inviting profit margins and move towards AI video games, I guarantee it. We don't need an industry full of games that are poorly mimicking human expression. This one kinda goes hand in hand with AI replacing all the creative job roles, since if there's one major issue that seems to always finds its way into headlines virtually every week, it'll be the huge amount of layoffs in the video game industry. Video game creation is often seen as this mystical fantasy by so many young people. This ambitious prospect for future employment that feels on the same level as being a professional athlete or an astronaut. Imagine your game being to help create video games. Imagine being paid to put more video games out into the world. Sounds a bit too good to be true, right? Well, yeah, pretty much, and if the crunch doesn't grind you down into a very fine dust and you somehow make it to the other side of a grueling, painful development cycle, you are highly likely to lose your job anyway. Job security isn't really a thing in the video game industry unless you're really high up. I suppose that's the case of most industries though, and basically any CEO from any company can walk away with their insane compensation package despite criminal sexual misconduct in the workplace. But you feel it more with video games due to the team project mentality that comes with basically every game's development. Your average AAA game will load up on staff, often numbering in the high hundreds or low thousands, and crunch the shit out of them for a good 3 to 5 years to get a video game out on time. Once everything's done, the studio downsizes to save costs and hundreds of employees are left without a job. This is primarily an issue in the Western world, with North America being maybe the worst place to be a professional games developer in the world, but this is a widespread issue that is getting so bad that nearly 20,000 jobs have been lost since the start of last year, and the recent layoffs have their own Wikipedia page. It's gotten that bad. There's other industries that could really use the creativity and ingenuity of games developers. That brain drain will hit different, I tell ya. All of these issues kinda snowball together when you think about it. Basically everything boils down to how video games make their money, which is the industry part of the video game industry. And if a game studio can do shitty things to increase profits, you better believe that they'll give it a go at the very least. However, this is made especially difficult given that the average AAA game now comes with extraordinarily high budgets. The cost of developing a high-end video game has been steadily rising recently due to improved technology and higher expectations of how open a game should be, and with everything else that has been going on, a lot of which has already been discussed in this video, you'd think that the drastic measures taken by many a game studio would be slowly turning the tide back towards making video games more profitable. Oh fuck no, you ain't got a chance of that. You only have to look at the development budget of some recent AAA games to fully understand how dire the situation is. The infamous one is Spider-Man 2, which had its budget leaked from a hack last year, and with a development budget of more than $300 million, it needed to shift a serious number of copies to make a return on the investment. It managed this because it's a sequel to a really successful game featuring an existing IP that has crazy longevity thanks to DLC, but this should hardly be the poster child for sustainability. Insomniac spent 3 times as much here as they did with the first game, and their reward was a game that did just about as well as Spider-Man 1. And yeah, it's got improvements, but not enough to justify a budget this big. Plenty of studios are following suit with big budgets, but not all of them are seeing a return. And if a game does bad enough, that kind of loss is enough to put a lot of people out of work. It encourages this horrendously toxic culture where a workforce is pushed far beyond its capabilities so that some kind of profit can be made, and this spreads to smaller problems like the rising price of the games themselves, to more existential ones like favouring artificial intelligence to keep staff salaries down. Listen, the video game industry is powerful and oftentimes terrifying, and may well have a contingency plan for if and when shit hits the fan in a breathtakingly terrible way, but if I had to put money on one thing that could end it all, video games getting more and more costly is looking pretty possible. There will come a point where games get to a price that not a lot of people will want to pay for. I don't think we're far off that. And yeah, those are my predictions for what will probably kill the video game industry. Do you agree, or is there something even worse? Let me know in a comment down below. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe for more, and hit that bell for notifications of every new upload. My last video was about games that went offline in 2023, so go watch that. And I also want to thank my top supporters on Patreon, including Scott, Riker, Sarah Malion, and the Green Scorpion. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.